first of all, I'm your host today, Devin Fountain. If you don't know who I am, I'm a freelancer. I used to do Good Time Agency. It's still up, but technically I closed the signups because I don't really want people doing it. I want to do big projects now. And I'm joined by Eric Odom, who is sort of a co-host. He's like slightly a moderator as well. Extraordinaire, great commentator. Diego Toto de Oliveira. I might be pronouncing that wrong, Diego. I'm so sorry.
That Diego guy's with us today.
Just Diego.
Yeah, he has more of a freelancing solo perspective. And I would love for him to ask questions as well. And then, of course, our guest, Brandon Herbel, who runs Bones Co. with his wife, Missy. He goes by the Twitter handle, All Work, No Sleep. Brandon, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit to people who don't know who you are?
Yeah, so I am self-taught, essentially took over my family computer when I graduated high school, taught myself CSS and HTML, got a pirated version of Photoshop from a friend and just kind of jumped in. So my journey has been different than, some people that maybe went to school or had some more traditional learning. So yeah, everything has just been kind of learned by doing. And Bones Co. this year will be 4 years. Missy and I have been together for 9, and just kind of got to a point where we were tired of working in-house and corporate gigs and decided to just jump in. She went full-time out the gate, and I just quit my full-time job back in September to do Bones Co. full-time. So yeah, here we are.
That was September of last year?
Yes. Yep.
Oh, so yeah. So like about when we met. Nice.
Yep.
So today's topic is maybe seemed a little nebulous in terms of the text when you're reading it on Twitter, but we're going to be talking about basically the pros and cons of design/web development agency versus just freelancing on your own, what that's like. And I have like a really brief and sort of vague outline, and we can move away from it if we want, but I just want to talk about like the pros of working as an agency versus yourself, the cons as well, and then maybe getting a little bit into pros and cons of freelancing, but not so much. We're going to save that for another party. It's more like looking at it from the agency perspective. And then I want to take questions from the audience as well as any questions that I've received on Slack. And I also got a text from actually somebody who is in the audience. So we're going to get to that as well. So first of all, from a pro perspective of running an agency, I guess I just want to like get it out there. What are some of the pros? And then we can kind of dive into each one like separately.
Yes.
And I have some examples too, if you want to go over those.
Yeah, I mean, I can jump in. I mean, in regards of like doing it under a moniker, whether you present yourself as an agency or not, is something that I've always done. And it wasn't until like, honestly, the last couple months, I think someone tweeted about it. Maybe it was Josh, and you had chimed in too, but I feel like now realizing like separating myself from Brandon Herbel as the designer and doing it under a moniker, it just kind of helps me separate the work and who I am as a person. And that's been helpful, but I mean, pros and cons, and feel free to jump in. But I think, as Bones Co. and doing that as like we call ourselves a creative studio, I mean, creative agency, it's all, I guess, the same, but just kind of presenting ourselves as not bigger than what we are, but people can take it a little more seriously when it's seen as more than just one person, though it is just Missy and I for the most part.
That does bring me to one of the points actually, which is one of the pros of potentially having an agency is sort of the access to experts, not necessarily having immediate access like I have all these people that I have, but more like being able to pull from different industries. Like maybe you need an illustrator for doing something that you can't do, or potentially a copywriter that is stronger at one particular thing than you are. Is that something that you guys do at Bones Co?
Yeah. So I mean, shout out to Eric. He's helping out right now with a couple projects that we have. We've worked with contractors here and there in the past to do with like development. Um, yeah, so we definitely reach out to our network and people that we feel like might be a better fit for the job. But yeah, we don't really ever want to grow outside of just her and I, if possible, which, we go back and forth. Is that potentially limiting in making more money or getting bigger projects because it is just the two of us? But
Yeah.
um, I just felt like once, the responsibility, and she managed a team of people at Urban Outfitters for 7 years, and I've been a manager, and I don't know. It's a lot, and it's a lot of responsibility and a lot of potential stress that I don't know if I want to get into.
So having the team of experts is nice because it allows you to do things that you typically can't, but under the same name that you currently have, which I guess gives you more power, right? Gives you more social proof for other people. But as far as like the downsides are concerned on having those experts on call at any time, or having other people not necessarily on staff, but being able to tap them, what would you say is the downside of those things? I heard a little bit of that when you were talking about um, you wanted to just be you and Missy.
Yeah, I mean the downside I think of growing bigger than that. I don't know. In like an agency world, and I'm speaking from experience, and anyone else that's worked in agencies have maybe dealt with the same thing. But um, I've had a few friends that ran a small agency. It was three of them, and then they grew. They got like Facebook and Google as a client, and so they went from 3 to 15 people. Well, then they lost both of those accounts, and then had to ultimately end up firing like pretty much their entire staff. And
Yeah.
so um, that responsibility of really messing with people's like livelihood and like how they take care of their families is a thing that, at least at the moment, isn't just a thing that like I want to do willy-nilly. It'll like have to be something where we're like it makes sense to grow and to like actually bring on employees.
Yeah. And I do want to take some questions from the audience as well. Caitlin Sullivan asks, is being seen as bigger as an agency an assumption, or is it something you've gotten feedback on from clients?
I mean, on our website, we're pretty clear that, I mean, it's just the two of us, but with the people that we've met over the years and the connections that we have to rely on, I'm usually pretty open and transparent about that as well, where the client
The
is
size.
aware that we're
Yeah.
working with someone else, or hey, this person's going to be on the Slack channel with us, just so that there's transparency, and they're working with us on this project.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we try to be as open and just transparent as possible.
Has that ever come back to bite you in the ass? Like you've said, been very transparent about the size of your agency or the amount of people that you can pull or grab. And then the client comes back and says, oh, we thought you were bigger. We thought you were trying to, we thought you could do something more than what you can possibly do.
Not necessarily in that route, but I feel like we've maybe lost out on some bigger bids because the client was upset, or not upset, but like,
Yeah.
why is it going to cost this much when it's just you or just the two of you working on this?
And
So
yeah. And what do you say to
yeah,
that?
I mean, it's a tough
I know.
way to
So,
answer it. I mean,
yeah.
essentially, like, just I totally understand, and I try to just be as professional as possible and just say that I totally understand, and if we're not a right fit, then
Yeah.
good luck. But that's only happened a few times, thankfully. I think with the authenticity and the way that we describe ourselves on our site too, that um, it kind of cuts out the people that we don't want to work with. So far,
Yeah.
we haven't run into that too much over the last few years.
I couldn't find the exact question, but somebody previously asked, where/how do I find the right people to bring onto the team? And I know that you're a two-person team, but I want to ask this question in two parts. Where do you find those people to bring on? And let's say I'm a freelancer who is looking for work and I want to work for an agency like yours, or I want to be contracted for a little bit of work like that too, right? Kind of get outside my own comfort zone or maybe make a little bit more money. Um, how should I position myself to be found by you?
Yeah. I mean, the first part is just from doing it for so long and networking and meeting people over the years. A lot of it has been just through, I mean, interactions of people I've met here in town, in Omaha, otherwise, Twitter or a lot of these Slack groups. So Timothy Ricks, his Slack channel, I met my friend Noah, who's contracted with us a lot.
Yeah,
Obviously, through like Reloom, Flow Party, FinSuite,
totally.
just reaching out to people and like hitting them up and being like, hey, I see, you might have something that we need help on. Are you interested?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
yeah, so I mean, just try to utilize my network and group of people as much as I can, or even ask them if they know someone and suggest it
yeah.
that way.
And the second part, what if I'm a freelancer and I want to set myself up to be hired by you, or I want you to see me? How would I best do that?
Yeah, I mean, I put a thing out on Twitter to have people reach out and like chat with me, and we could talk about anything and everything. About 5 or 6 of them were talking about how do I get work. This doesn't, take it for what it's worth, but
Yeah,
an email or a tweet or a Slack DM or whatever it looks like, and just reaching out to someone and sharing your work and just being like, hey, I love what you do. Um, if there's any opportunities for us to collaborate, but I'm a big proponent of just like reaching out, and the worst thing that they can say is no, and if it doesn't work out, that's okay. But that's how I got a lot of my bigger clients and got a lot of my like long-term clients over the years, was just simply reaching out to brands or companies or designers I
just
admired, and
taking the leap and just
yeah,
saying
and it
like,
and it
hey,
worked
like
out.
I'm a designer and I want to come work with your agency for a little bit and see how that
Y-
goes.
Yeah,
Not
yeah, and
apologizing for it.
I think also, like, they always say like show the work, or do the type of work that you want to like be doing. So
Yeah.
I was listening to the Overflow podcast that Melissa was on, but yeah, like just make stuff for yourself. I mean,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
maybe to a fault, but like I'm always like coming up with new ideas and trying to build new things and try out different things. And so the cool thing about that is there's no holdback or limitations or
Mhm.
revisions or things like that. So just kind of putting yourself out there with passion projects and things that you like to do.
Yeah. I felt like despite you being I would consider a two-person agency pretty solidly, right? Occasionally
Mhm.
tapping some contractors. So I also reached out to Melissa and I said, at Eureka, where and how do you find the right people to bring onto your team? And
Mm.
she gave me a very short answer, but I didn't need a long one. She said community, which is kind of the answer that you gave as well. She said that's how I found Ilya and Carter through the Flow Party. I think Carter is here now. I don't know if Ilya is here. I'd have to go through like the whole list, but I think community is like a really great way at finding people to work for your agency. You don't necessarily have to like put out a job and say like I'm looking for a designer for this or I'm looking for a developer for this, but like you said, just starting a conversation in earnest, not really applying for something, but just reaching out to people who share the same level of passion that you do and seeing if you connect in any particular way. I had an agency last week reach out to me for the same thing and it ultimately didn't work out, but we're friends now. And I think that that's maybe even a better connection because I might not be able to work for their agency, but you know, they can hook me up with other people. We can collaborate together and maybe put something out that will get eyes on other things too. And
Mm.
they get the same benefit out of it as well.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I had a mentor that once said like always take a call, like always like meet with someone, because you never know that that little interaction, as small or short of a time span that might be, it could potentially change the trajectory of your life. You never know
yeah.
what that client might be doing, or uh, who they might be working with, or any of that stuff. Is just like always reach out, and yeah, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, but you
Yeah,
never know.
totally. So for the people that are just joining, which it seems to be like people still coming in, we're talking about the pros and cons of running an agency versus freelancing, not necessarily getting into the freelance side. So if you have any questions about running an agency, um, ask away in chat. We'll get to them. We're going to sprinkle them all throughout. I also have a question from, let's see, Corey, or no, actually from Mason. How and when to share work samples on your site? I've seen a wide variety of full case studies to only a few teaser images. Curious to get other takes on what they prefer. What do you think about that? Showing like a full case study, overview, final results, images with little alt text and everything versus here's my client, here's what year it was, here's some images.
Yeah, I mean, I think case studies are great, but I mean, that's a great example right now. Like Missy and I have been working on our new site for 3 or 4 months, and the biggest thing that's holding us up is the case studies, just because it's taking time to gather the photos, gather all the assets, mock things up, write new content for all of those pages. It's something
Yeah.
that we know that's important to kind of tell the story in the process, but it takes a lot of time. So, I mean, that's where like just posting things on Twitter is great. I haven't used Dribble in a while, but
Yeah.
that used to be a good place. Um, but even my personal site, like allworknosleep.com, I essentially like last Christmas was like, I'm just gonna build a quick site that's not super flashy, that will allow me to just quickly link to Webflow sites that I've built. Or,
Yeah.
you know, if I have time to make the animated GIF, I'll show little snippets of images of the branding that I did. But I think there are obviously benefits to having case studies, but also don't stop from just sharing things that you're doing in whatever capacity that is. If that's on your site,
Yeah.
if that's through social, share it.
So you're saying that it's not necessarily about, you know, one or the other. It's just get the damn thing up. Show the work that you're doing. Talk about the work.
Yeah, and it's, you know, it's all subjective and what, you know, the client or person that is going to see that, but ultimately the if it's design or a website, they're going to have that reaction through the visual side of it, through the
Yeah.
interacting with it, and not so much of your process. Maybe if you're trying to get a full-time job, or you know you're trying to like, you know, beef up your resume and like really want to like put some thought onto the process. But
Yeah.
I mean, again, only speaking for myself, but even going through other people's portfolios, especially when I was a manager and on a product design team. But like we all know, people are not going to sit and read
Yeah.
paragraphs and paragraphs of reasoning and looking at all the sketches. I mean, I think it's great to be able to talk to that, but I don't know. I just feel like it, even personally, it prevents us from just getting the work out there. Missy and I are sitting on probably 3 years of some really cool projects that I've shared with a few of you, but like nobody else even knows like what we've done or what we can do just because we're working on getting the case studies out.
Yeah. Yeah. And Fernando asks, what about NDA? So I want to ask from the agency side, what about NDA? Some companies are reluctant to freelancers, but I'm going to switch to show their work on their sites.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have dealt with it in the past. So far, with anything that we've done with Bones Co., and usually in our SOWs, we're pretty clear that, hey, if we take on this project, we would love to be able to use this in our portfolio and share with other people, and have not had anyone like really have an issue with that or have us sign an NDA. I have in the past, but um, my thoughts on that, and definitely open to hear your thoughts too, or anyone
Yeah.
else's
Yeah.
thoughts.
Yeah.
But I feel like sharing it through other ways, whether it's like emailing a potential client or agency, like a PDF like pitch deck of your work, or you give them the password to a page that's like gated. Like you can share it with other people so they can get the idea, just like maybe not publicly out there.
Yeah. Like a locked page or
Yeah.
something like
So
that.
it's like you can still share it. It's just not like, I guess, general access to some of those
Right.
projects.
Right. So one of the other things I want to talk about is this really common idea that agencies, not freelancers, are the one that's putting out quality, consistent work because they have a sort of a backing behind them, right? Like a team of people that are all aligned towards the same thing. Do you think that that's true? And do you think that that's a pro aspect of working, like doing an agency, is having like an aligned vision with everybody?
Yeah, I mean, the two heads are better than one. I mean, I think the more people that you have can get things done faster and potentially be more efficient, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Then, I think that then they can get into politics or opinions and
Yeah.
things can, I don't know. I think there's pros and cons to both sides of it.
So you think that there's also like a potential for communication breakdown, like maybe people not understanding like the vision that's going on behind the scenes. Too many
Yeah,
cooks in the
yeah.
kitchen.
And again, as a designer, and I always like say this and try to, speak on this too, but like it's all subjective too. So I mean, it's all just,
Yeah.
that person's opinion. And so ultimately, if the client's happy, then I'm happy. And so I don't know, once you work with team, and I mean, don't get me wrong, I've loved everyone I've worked with in the past and like the teams that I've had.
Hmm.
Um, it's just like everyone works differently and just gets, can just make things harder or make things take longer once there's more cooks in the kitchen. But I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. So, on potential for long-term partnerships and collaborations, would you say that you've seen a difference in that versus freelancing? Like a company coming back to you and saying, "Hey, we want your agency on retainer," or "We really like what you did. Can we keep working with your agency versus you as a freelancer?" Do you think that there's a difference in that?
Um, Difference in like how so? Because I mean, we've definitely like in the past, I've been like just a solo, like just me before I even knew Missy, where I would be on retainer. But I mean, we even
Yeah.
currently now have like 3 retainer clients. So um,
I
yeah, I don't know.
guess
I guess
yeah, I guess just what I'm asking is do you think that with the agency, is there more potential for long-term relationships than in the freelancing world?
I mean, I think that really just depends on how you position yourself. I think depending on the company and their needs and the amount of needs and how often they're going to need it, I think it's totally something that one person can do. If it's something where you're building out hundreds of landing pages and thousands of marketing assets and things like that, like a retainer with like a full agency might be better. But yeah, I mean, it's totally doable just as like one or two people.
Yeah, yeah. So on one of the negative aspects of it, I want to talk about expenses and overhead costs because we've been really enjoying talking about money lately. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you how much your agency charges or how much you charge. But more along the lines of expenses, is that something that people should be concerned about when they're starting an agency? What are some hidden costs that maybe people overlook when they're like, I'm just going to start one? I'm going to be just like Brett from Design Joy and start my own little design as a service agency. What are some people missing that they might not know about? It's a hard one.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think even if it was just me, but still needing the things that I use, I think the pros is that with like having an LLC and having an accountant and some of the tax breaks and things that kind of go with that. But I mean, I looked the other month when we had a meeting with our accountant. I mean, we're almost like with QuickBooks and Bonsai and Slack and
Yeah.
Figma and the whole, fonts and everything. I mean, I think it was almost $1,000 a month just for the tools and the various subscriptions and things that we have.
Yeah.
Definitely made me rethink, like, ooh, do we actually need all of this? But yeah, I mean, it gets expensive.
Yeah. Greg Barbosa in chat, who owns Teller agency, weareteller.com, he mentioned in chat, oh, hidden costs are a killer. All the little services I use stack up real quick. I spend about $1,000 a month, which is exactly what you said,
Yep.
across all tools to keep my business running. By the way, Greg, feel free to come up if you want. I don't mind. Um, yeah, I think that's definitely a surprising cost. Like, even just as a solo freelancers, like all these tiny little things that you kind of forget about, really like death by a thousand cuts, like you got your Webflow and you got your Figma. Okay, that's obvious. But then you've got
Mhm.
QuickBooks or Bonsai if you want to do invoicing, or maybe you're doing Stripe business stuff. You've got insurance. You've got to pay for internet. Technically, you can write that off, which is really nice. So I guess I want to go back a little bit. You mentioned an LLC. How much do you know about like LLCs versus S corp versus something else? Which is something we'll end up talking about at another party later. We have a lawyer who's going to come on and talk about contracts at another flow party, which you guys should not miss for sure. But I'm asking you now, how did you learn about LLCs and S corp? Were you like, what am I doing? I should hire somebody.
Yeah, I mean, we reached out to a few friends that were doing something similar. We just went through LegalZoom, and that was pretty like hands off and a pretty seamless experience. We got an accountant, which in the, at that time, 16, 17 years I'd freelanced. I'd never had an accountant in my life, but that was like the biggest,
Yeah,
greatest thing to
it's
ever happen
great.
to
It's
us.
so great.
Yeah. So, in regards to the LLC or S corps and the like legalities and things like that, I will say that I'm not very knowledgeable of that. That was kind of, we did that at the beginning, and
Yeah.
Missy kind of took care of some of that, but has definitely helped out, with the tax write-offs and writing things off as a business. Um, yeah, and just to echo what I just said about that accounting thing, that has been great too, just because I mean, when you have a good year, make sure you pay everyone, make sure you pay your quarterly taxes.
Yeah. Pay him
We
good.
had the
Be
like our
nice to him.
yes. Yeah, because when our first year and we didn't do that, yeah, it was really crazy to then go and pay like $15,000 in
Yeah.
one large
Yeah.
sum.
Yeah.
So don't do
Taxes
that.
just came out of my bank account this morning and I went, cool. What a great Friday.
Yeah.
I love how the day started. Moeller or Mueller, but I didn't see an umlaut, asks, if you're regularly working with a company, how do you broach the topic of being on a retainer? And how do you set that up, like in terms of contracts and payment processing?
Yeah, a couple ways that has happened with us is that we had a friend that was like, "Hey, I can't really take this on. They're looking for someone for a more steady amount of time." And then, so right off the gate, the retainer conversation was like, that was the whole thing. But we have a client, Alpaca, who I post about.
Yeah.
We've worked with them for the
Great
last
client from
year,
what I've
and
heard.
yeah, it's awesome. They're amazing and doing amazing things for the teachers and like just teacher, like now they're going nationwide. So yeah, it's super awesome. But it got to a point where they're like, okay, we've done like 3 or 4 SOWs. This is, we're gonna consistently use you guys. We know that you know our brand and what we're looking to do. Um, Maybe we just kind of work out a retainer side of things. So yeah, so I mean, usually it's been a little more organic in the conversations that we've had when it switches over from having a normal client then going to a retainer. Um, but usually it's been them that suggested it.
Yeah.
Um,
And what does that
just
look
I
like?
don't know. Yeah,
Like, what does the retainer look like? Are you, with a flat project, you're basically saying, here's the amount that it will cost, here's what I will deliver you, and here's when it will be done. Maybe. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way. With a retainer, it's more like what you're saying, it's going to be this much per month and you get this many hours. Like, how does that work for you?
yeah. I mean, with Alpaca, and this is something that we're kind of testing out, and I guess similar to the Design Joy, like unlimited request side of things, but with an amount that we both agreed upon,
Yeah.
that this will follow like social assets, this will new features to the website, updates that or bugs that might happen. It'll kind of cover those bases, and we try to do all of those things within a 3 to 5 work week timeline to get those things done. Um, but so far it's worked for our favor, but it could get crazy with certain clients where the asks are not there's way more asks than it is like what money you're making out of it.
Yeah.
I think the retainer money side of it is that it's good because you know that there's that amount and it's going to be like consistent for at least 3 to 6 months.
Yeah.
That's another
Yeah.
conversation that we try to have is like, this isn't just a month type of thing. If we're going to be on retainer, we'd like to, in that contract that we write out, it's either a 3 month or a 6 month, just so like that is something that we know that we can budget in and kind of
Yeah.
bring in other projects around that. But
And
that
I think
hasn't ever
that's
been an
like
issue.
a really common misconception too with like the design as subscription services, is that people will just assume like, you know, these clients will come and sign up for your little agency service and you'll get months and months of money and it'll be an appropriate cadence and you'll feel fine. But sometimes it gets abused. Like somebody went to Good Time and they signed up and they were like, hey, we just want one website and we only want 1 month and we're going to cancel as soon as we're done. And they were fully transparent about it. And that's when I was like, well, I guess I got to change the rules a little bit because, like you said, you know, if you're a client and you want one website and you're only going to pay that 1 month retainer cost, you will technically get the website in that 1 month, but you, the agency, Brandon and Missy, aren't going to make much money out of that.
Yeah.
Because they're essentially just milking you for that one moment, that one website, which is really unfortunate. Mr. Carter, I think that's just Carter. I don't know if he changed his name to Mr. Carter. He wrote, is it just me or is anyone hesitant to do retainer work? I'm going to turn this into a question. Sounds like a great opportunity for sure, but I always feel hesitant. I guess that leads me to the question of like, how do you know when retainer work is appropriate? Like for me, when I think of retainer work, it's a little scary because sometimes a client will just jump right in and it's almost like an early relationship where the person's like, are you ready to get married right now? And you're like, dude, we just met. Like we need to figure out if we work together or not. How do you determine that for your agency? Like whether that's going to be working. Bree said married at first sight. Yeah, exactly. At first Zoom.
Yeah, I mean, I think before like any kind of contracts are signed or money has exchanged hands, there's just like some conversations, whether that's, you know, back and forth through emails or on some of these kickoff calls, but just really like understanding and making sure that we're both on the same page of we're both, you know, mutually getting what we want out of this.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, this subscription model that we've been seeing a lot is technically a retainer, but yeah, I feel like a retainer is something that usually someone's not just coming out of the gate and reaching out to someone and being like, hey, let's have this person be on retainer. It's something that kind of happens over time, most of the time. But yeah, I mean, I think communication is key. Just talk it out and make sure that everyone's kind of coming into that relationship mutually beneficial.
Yeah. I want to let the audience ask some questions too, potentially. In the meantime, I have a tweet from Corey, which I had pulled up and then I closed it. Very cool. He said, this is from Corey Moen, who, by the way, is the senior brand designer at Webflow. He said, agency hot take of the day. Should an agency build a team with a corporate or collective approach? The corporate being the agency owners are paid based on the success of business, while the team is paid on a flat hourly salary basis. Owner takes all/most of the risk, while the team has a more guaranteed way to earn, but the owner holds the potential to grow with business success. And then there's the collective, which is pretty much the opposite, where everyone, you know, combines their desired earnings for each project, or everyone gets a percent of each project based on the scope of involvement and skill set. Non-owners take on more to grow with business success. Of course, nothing exists as absolutes, and maybe the ideal is a balance of both, but nevertheless, it's been something I pondered a while as I collaborate and observe teams across the creative and Webflow community. What do you think about that? About collective versus, I guess, what did he write? Corporate? Yeah, corporate. Capitalism.
Yeah, I mean, kind of back to earlier when I was talking about, work. I personally worked in-house at an agency and know people that have started and ran agencies. Um, Again, for me personally, the responsibility that puts on you to then continually make sure that work is coming in and that those relationships, it takes a lot more people to make things like that work.
Yeah.
The conversations, the client management, the project management, the execution of the design, the development of the design, all those types of things. It just gets tricky, and something that I personally, and like with Bones Go, like I said, like we would prefer not to ever really get into, but I know that limits
Like
us.
at that size.
Yeah, that it
Yeah.
will limit us and cap us at some point of we're not going to be a multi-million-dollar agency if we don't at some point expand into employees. And at the moment, that's just like something that we've talked about and thought about, and it's just I don't know, it doesn't make sense for us at the moment.
Yeah.
The collect Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm listening to you. I'm acknowledging.
Yeah, the collective side of it. I mean, for as long as I can think, and I always use this analogy, and I think I've said it to a few of you, but I mean, you think about like the Power Rangers, and each has like their own color and their own like special weapon, and all of the Megatron like monster to take over the world. So
Yeah,
I'm
the
very
Megazord,
big.
by the way.
Megazord.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Except the Green
I'm on
Ranger,
the
he does his own thing. He's like a freelancer contractor.
I'm a big proponent of like building a team and working with the people that you need for that specific project,
Yeah.
because yeah, I don't know. Like I said, my friend that runs a studio here in town got a lot of work, and they had to let go of 10 of their employees. And bigger agencies, like multi-million-dollar agencies, that stuff happens all the time. They lose a contract or lose a bid, and they got to lay off half their staff. And so
Yeah.
it gets tricky.
I've definitely been on both sides of it, more of the collective side a little bit, and then definitely a lot of the corporate side of things. And I think that one downside to the corporate side of things is that it often feels like, as somebody who's on the lower rung of the ladder, you're not necessarily contributing to the growth of the agency. You're contributing to the growth of the owner's pocket, which can feel very frustrating when you don't know why, you're working this many hours and your pay is only this much. And it feels like nothing ever sort of comes of that. Like you get a raise every year or you get like a little bonus, but it never feels like the transparency is fully there. And that can be a really frustrating aspect. Whereas with the collective, obviously the upside is that how much everybody else is making. You can demand how much you think you're worth. You can work as much as you want to make that amount of money. The downside being that really there's nobody to blame but yourself when it comes time to collect that paycheck, right? Like everybody gets paid, and let's say you don't have a client in March, or maybe the particular client that you get is small and some team members aren't needed. Everybody then collectively gets a significantly less amount of money, smaller amount of money. Can't English. So that can be, a very frustrating thing. Emmett said, I think the co-op model can only scale to the amount that everyone is equally invested in moving the business forward. It almost always deteriorates over time. Yeah, it's interesting. That's kind of what I was talking about, where everybody's on the hook. Greg Barbosa wrote, I think a profit sharing model in a web agency might work, but I don't really think anyone is building that way. And then I'm not sure. Corey asked a really long question. I don't even know if I want to read out loud. Corey, that's really long. Is there anything that I haven't asked that you want to talk about as far as agency life is concerned?
Let me see here. I have some notes.
We got a list. Also, Corey said I can speak it aloud if that's allowed. Sure. Do you want to come up for a second? I'll make you a little facilitator. Actually, I don't have to. I think you can just talk.
Hello, can y'all hear me?
Yeah. Hey, Corey.
What's up, y'all? Brandon, Devin, what's up, y'all?
What's up, dude?
no, the question or the comment rather was that like, I just seen this changing in the space, both the Webflow community and like even the broader creative community. Like examples that come to mind are things like stellar.work.
Yeah.
That there is this
Link in chat.
Yeah, there is this idea that like if 2 or 3 even solo freelancers partner, aka take this collective approach for a client, they all can earn more, and like what they do solo. But their ultimate, or they're like usually their collective price is still lower for the client than it is if the client went through to a larger agency that has therefore more overhead.
Yeah.
So like
absolutely.
It's better for everybody. And arguably like the only downside to the client is maybe might be like less handholding, less project management, less process that, you know, bigger agencies end up like ironing out really well.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's personally for me, like I've taken just this whole step back and rethink in the last couple of months of just like what freelance looks like in my life and like what options exist. And I've just been noticing that one more and been more and more interested to learn more about it. So like, that's the question.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, thank you for your contribution for sure. I know that this is like purely hypothetical theory, whatever, but I also think that a part of it is a pushback from the millennial and Gen Z generation from having been lower on the rung, like I mentioned earlier, and experiencing these things and then coming back and saying, oh, I don't want to be treated like that anymore. I want to share the wealth with the people that are at the same level, and like everybody kind of wins together and it feels really good. Josh Lowe has a comment too, so I'm gonna hand him the.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, what's up, baby?
I'm in a coffee shop right now. Hey, I believe that this is just a natural evolution of decentralizing things. Like, you just look at the way computers have evolved from like a giant, massive server room and a server computer in a room to now it's like personalized computers and like everything's decentralized. For me, I think this is the future, and curious to hear what you all think, because I feel like for me, like I'm super long on the freelancers. Like there's so much opportunity out there, and yeah, it's almost like putting the agencies out of business in terms of maybe not fully out, but you know what I mean, like in terms of
we're a creative
cost,
studio.
So many hot takes.
so yeah, anyways, I just wanted to add to that. I think the future is just smaller people, smaller designers collaborating, and everyone wins that way. It's the decentralization of work.
Yeah. And then Josh, you had one more comment about beanies from earlier?
Just wondering if you guys coordinated the your style.
No, but I can share my Amazon link to my beanies that are now my staple thing.
So
yes,
Brandon,
we got up the affiliate game.
Brandon didn't, but I did, because I know that Brandon always wears a beanie, and I just happen to have AirPods Max, so I was like, I'm gonna wear a beanie too because I know he will.
Yeah, we're gonna match.
That's because it's cold AF here in the Midwest. Am I right?
Yeah, it's like 3 degrees right now outside.
Yeah.
Oh, Corey too.
Oh
Nice.
shit!
You have a beanie too?
I turned on my camera. I'm like, all right. I mean, that's
Josh is now banned from chat for not wearing a beanie.
Yeah, Josh, I just want to,
Dude.
Josh, with the double hot take, decentralized and taking down all the agencies. I think I just want to add one more. I think Brandon alluded to it already. Like people refer to themselves as studios instead of agencies sometimes for this exact reason. I think is like it's a different approach where you're working with contractors and all that more regularly. So like, I don't think this needs to be a black, white, absolutist approach. Like you can absolutely still be like a small agile studio that works with other freelancers in a very similar mindset. Right. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a couple thoughts on that. I have 2 thoughts. One is like, with the creative studio and whatever, everyone's take on that is too. But with Missy and I, the type of work that we do together, we typically work together on branding projects. But at the end of the day, I do a lot of design and development and Webflow stuff. And she does a lot of interior and like environmental and space work. And so we didn't want to limit ourselves of just doing logos and websites. Like we can do anything. You want us to like build out a new restaurant and do all the interior down to like the seat cushions and the lampshades and all that stuff. You know, it's like thinking more broad too, where we didn't like put ourselves in a box of just being like an agency.
Yeah.
But yeah, and you'll kind of see that with like our new website and the way that we speak about like what we do is like going to be expanded on that a bit. But yeah, we just never wanted to like box ourselves in on that, and it's like encompasses more than that. But to the point of, I think with like a lot of the unfortunate layoffs of these big companies too, is that there's so much talent and badasses out there that now, of course, it's great to have that steady paycheck. But there's some like amazing creatives out there that now it's just the quantity or quality versus quantity type of thing. It's like you can be more agile and do things potentially quicker and have that more personal experience with the client by doing that. And then yeah, just calling on your homies and reaching out to people when you need to expand that. But I think we'll see a lot more people just kind of doing that collective approach.
Yeah. Emmett asked, but I'm going to apply it to you specifically. If you're running a one-person studio, or two in your case, why brand with a moniker versus your name? Like, why isn't it just like Herbal Studio versus Bones Co? Why?
Well, quick backstory, and I know, like, I think Eric's heard this and a few of them. So the whole name Bones Co. So Missy and I had like little pet names for each other. She would call me Bone Daddy, and I'd call her Bone Mommy when we first met. I know it's super cheesy, but essentially,
this is my favorite story.
Clip that.
When we got married,
Eric, clip that.
I have a daughter. I have a daughter from a previous marriage, and she has a son from a previous relationship. I don't care when we got married that she took my name. That wasn't important to me. So her and her son kept their name, and my daughter and I kept our name. But we consider ourselves the Bones family, like the Bones home. Like everything is just like kind of. We didn't mean to create a brand for ourselves, but we just like through who we are created that, and then we're like Bones Co.
Yeah,
has kind of a ring to it, and so that's what we called it. It's just like anything was like under that kind of that concept. But back to the beginning when I was saying having a moniker and working under something else, I like I said, I didn't realize until recently, but like separating yourself from it, it's helpful. Like if someone doesn't like something I did, or it's just I'm able to separate it. I'm like, that's Bones Co. And it's like just separating myself from like the work, because as a creative, and again speaking for myself, this is who I am. This is me exerting anything and everything, whether it's an idea, it's a logo, it's a website. I mean, this is coming from my brain, my soul. I'm giving this thing and creating these, companies and essentially, another person's dream by like giving them a website and a logo to this idea that they have. It's a lot of pressure. And so like separating it where it's not me, Brandon Herbel, it's just been helpful, and maybe something I didn't even like honestly realize or think about that way until recently. But I think it's it's different for everyone, and there's definitely successful people that do just use their name and are equally as successful.
So you think it almost feels like by using Bones Co., I don't want to say you can put the blame somewhere else, but it feels like you can take the pressure off of your name as a liability.
Not even like a liability or like getting anything from that side of it. It's just more, I don't know, more of a psychological like thing of me just wanting to be able to like almost set like little areas in my mind, like that's Bones Co. stuff, this is personal family stuff, this is it's just helpful that way. But I mean, at the end of the day, still doing the same type of work and putting the same kind of like thought process into it, it just kind of helps me separate it a bit.
Yeah. So when can we expect a Bones Home t-shirt that looks like the same style of tweet that blew up the other day for you for no reason whatsoever?
Fucking yeah. So actually, we have been working on a logo for the Bones home because over the last like 6 months to a year, we've been doing a bunch of stuff to the house and built a new deck and like murdered out our house. It's completely black.
I see that
And
with
so,
the black in the background there.
well, but the whole house, like everything, gutter,
Yeah.
the whole thing is completely black. So we've been thinking about one of our case studies on our site will be photos of our home and things that we've done because
The home
again,
itself,
it's not
that's
just,
cool.
yeah, just because I mean it's things that we're decorating, we're painting, we're doing murals, we're building
Yeah.
things, and like
Yeah.
showing that as like we don't do just logos and websites. Like this is like, you know,
Yeah.
it encompasses way more than that. So it's coming soon.
Yeah, that's really cool.
With the tweet, no fucking clue how that or why that blew up, but it was insane. I got over
Yeah.
250 followers from it, and it's an anomaly. I have no idea.
Wow. Nico Fernandez Wolf says black is a designer's favorite color. Please prove me wrong. Well, I'm not wearing black right now, neither is he. I want to go back to the question I had earlier, which was sort of a reverse question. It's like, is there a question that I haven't asked that you think I should have asked that you kind of want to talk about as far as agency life is concerned? Maybe things that I have missed or things that I overlook.
Not that I can think of. Just the disclaimer of these are only the opinions of my own and are subjective and
Yeah.
different for everyone. But these are only the things that I've learned from my journey and what have worked and hasn't worked for me. And so yeah, I mean, I hope it's helpful to someone and got something out of this. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
always, you know, subjective.
If you have one piece of advice that you would give to the audience regarding starting your own agency, what would that be?
Don't overthink it. Stop talking about it. Less talk, more do. Just put yourself out there.
Yeah.
You know, essentially, you know, if you have something that you enjoy doing or an idea or concept that you feel is a good idea, there are so many other people out there that think it's a good idea too. And so stop questioning yourself and just fucking do it.
And on the reverse side, one thing that you would say, don't do that.
Shit.
I'll do one do. Sounds bad. Hire an accountant. Like have somebody else handle your money, because you might know design really well, but you probably don't know money really well unless you went to school for that and you're also a designer, which is really cool. Hire somebody who does that professionally, because that leaves you room and time to do your thing professionally.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally piggybacking off of that. So, but yeah, the don't, like, if you plan on doing this as like a living and it's something where you're going to feed yourself and your potentially your family on, don't not get an accountant and don't think that like you'll just be able to figure it out. Like it, you know, if you're making thousands or tens of thousands of dollars a month, whatever capacity it is, like you don't want to get in trouble with the IRS and like, you know, you don't want to get audited and all that stuff. So just pay your bills, pay an accountant, pay your taxes.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Cool. Well, if you don't have a negative thing, then I think that's all I got. And I don't think the audience is asking any more questions. Moeller asked one more question, which is how much money should you make before hiring an accountant? My answer is find out what the accountant costs. And if you're okay with paying that, then that's your answer. Because whatever money you owe, they will help you save more money than if you used a software. They're good at that stuff.
Yeah. And also, yeah, I mean, and earlier on too, like we spent so much time doing a lot of that stuff ourselves, like for the first year. And it's not fun. I mean, it's fun for people that like accounting and it's fun for other people, but like it gets your head out of the game and you can't, like, you know, it's just another stress and thing to worry about. That isn't a fun thing to stress and worry about if you like to make websites and logos.
Yeah.
You know?
And somebody on Twitter asked me the other day, where do you find an accountant? And I found it the same way I do everything. I ask my friends. find out find out from people who are more successful than you, who they use, and just ask them. There's no harm in that. So
yeah, I haven't used it yet. Our accountant is someone that's here locally, like in Nebraska. She's not from Omaha, but she's from a smaller town outside of Omaha. But yeah, I mean, there's tons of people online, definitely referrals of friends and other people that run businesses. Yeah, that's how we've met the people we've worked with in the past. But yeah.
Well, Brandon, thank you for joining Flow Party today. I think that was really insightful. Also, it's just fun to talk to you on a Friday, like with a good excuse. Where can people find you? Where can people find your work?
Yeah, All Work No Sleep on Twitter, thebonesco.com, allworknosleep.com. Shameless plug of my daughter's clothing company, Ice Cream.
Can you put that in chat?
.co. Yeah, I will. She just has loved the type of work that Missy and I do, and is trying to follow in our footsteps.
Dude,
so
that's so cool.
I'm just trying. I haven't shared this. I just taught her how to build something in Webflow. We've been playing Mario Party on the Switch as a family, and I had her build our character cards and create some animations with Webflow. So finally throwing her into the Webflow world that she's been wanting to get into. So
yeah, I would love to see that in chat, dude. That's really cool. Again, thank you so much for joining us.
All right, we'll get there. Also got to shout out Art Department Club because Brandon announced
it
today, and that's coming soon.
Yeah, I'll chat about that real quick. So as
Brandon, what's Art Department Club?
One last thing. So yeah, I have had this idea. I used to write for an online music zine way back in the day called absolutepunk.net. But it was a good trajectory of how I got to where I was and networked and met a lot of people, and just wanted to start sharing other creatives' stories and have a platform to do so. And so Art Department, I was talking with Eric, and essentially the game plan is that we'll just interview and chat with creatives, but not specifically just in our wheelhouse. We're going to try to reach out to tattoo artists and painters and writers and all walks of life, but just kind of share their story and give them a platform to share their story, and have some other kind of cool show ideas that we'll want to do. But yeah, more to come. We're kind of working out the details, but site's pretty much built. We've lined up a few people to talk to, like my friend Colin, who used to work at Nike for 10 years. We're going to talk to Clark Orr, who's a really awesome illustrator, if you haven't heard of him. So we've already got some shows lined up. Just got to get it out there into the world. So stay tuned.
Cool. Looking forward to that one for sure. Thank you again so much. I'm sure everybody else is really grateful for it too.